Hello and welcome to the Cannabination program. And I think I have a pretty interesting show this week, and hopefully the world will start to get a little better soon. So, this is the Cannabination program on WGOTLP 100.1 FM, Gainesville Community Radio, streaming worldwide at WGOT.org. And got a little bit of beefed up the sound system here on my home studio a little bit this week. So maybe it sounds good on the headphones. So let's see. Hopefully it'll come out good when it airs. On with the show. Here's a clip from the 710 show, the local cannabis YouTube show program that airs from here in Central Florida, and they're talking about some of the things that are going on in the world and in the country concerning transforming the cannabis legal situation.
Good morning. And they may legalize marijuana in the U.S. and the UN, like worldwide. Is that possible? Could this be global legalization? Oh, no. Let's find out. And I'm also tired of marijuana being illegal. Right. That's ridiculous. You know, it's funny. For so many years, we were like, why is it on the same level as LSD? And you're just like, well, maybe LSD shouldn't be on there either. You know what I mean? And then, like the opiates are Schedule 2 because we could just get those from the from the doctor. Just got to find the doctor that says, yeah, you need heroin. But the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, is scheduled to vote tomorrow, or is scheduled to have a committee hearing or whatever tomorrow on the MORE Act, right? And it's the marijuana. What was it again? Reform and Expungement Act, marijuana opportunity. Yeah, marijuana reinvestment opportunity or something like that. Yeah, marijuana opportunity and investment act, and it is really comprehensive. They are making some last minute changes to it to specific definitions and things. Like, for instance, one of the things in the MORE Act is that there's going to be like the tax proposal. So they're going to tax marijuana pretty high, 5% nationally, and then that tax money is going to go towards helping people that were adversely affected by the war on drugs. But who does that mean, right? So they're going to narrow those specifics a little bit, because that's really important when a bill comes up to vote. Those are the types of questions that come up. What does this mean? This is really vague, right. Like, who was affected by it? They've got to tighten the definitions up. So they're going to be doing that, and we're going to see what happens. So not just the United States, but the United Nations is also voting on marijuana rescheduling and CBD stuff. So that's where I think it's really important. And the UN's Commission on Narcotic Drugs, or the CND, has held numerous meetings on a few proposals concerning the WHO recommendations on marijuana, and that's the World Health Organization. So that who's on first? Hey. That was good.
Couldn't help myself.
Thank you so much for that. The UN's Commission on Narcotic Drugs has held numerous meetings on proposals, including removing cannabis from the most restrictive scheduling category under the Global Treaty, which is, I think they call it Schedule 4. It's a little backwards. Since the WHO made 6 recommendations last year, they made recommendations that cannabis should not be illegal, and all the stuff that we keep hearing in our world is kind of it takes a long time to get up the ladder. So here are the recommendations that these are the recommendations that the WHO made. So the WHO has recommended that cannabis be removed from Schedule 4 of the 1961 Single Convention, which is part of the UN doctrine. And then it also proposes adding THC and dronabinol, synthetic THC medication, to Schedule 1 of the 1961 Convention, and if approved, delete them from Schedule 2 of the 1971 Convention. If this all sounds confusing, that's because it is. If the second recommendation is adopted, all THC to Schedule 1 of the 1961 Convention, if approved, and deleted from the 1971 Convention. I'd love to know what these conventions, you think they had a good time? I think it was like a big party. You think there was music at these conventions?
Like a big reunion.
You think it was like yeah, we're gonna have a convention,
a welcoming reception and everything.
Every 10
they
years.
have all that.
It's like 61 and 71. It's probably a big deal, and I'm making light of it. Number 4 is delete extracts and tinctures of cannabis from Schedule 1 of the 1961 Convention, and add a footnote to clarify CBD products containing no more than 0.2%, not 0.3, not 0.03, but 0.2% THC are not subject to international control. So that kind of removes hemp and that whole CBD marketplace from it distincts it from marijuana.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of that hearing, those hearings that the 710 Club was talking about, here is a clip from one of those hearings. And we have Representative Cohen. Representative Cohen speaking to the director of the DEA, Mr. Banicelli, DEA director. So here's some clips from that, and we'll go on from there.
Your hands are tied on Schedule 1, but it is ludicrous, absurd, crazy to have marijuana in the same level as heroin. Ask the late Philip Seymour Hoffman if you could. Nobody dies from marijuana. People die from heroin. And every second that we spend in this country trying to enforce marijuana laws is a second that we're not enforcing heroin laws. And heroin and meth are the two drugs that are ravaging our country. And every death, including Mr. Hoffman's, is partly the responsibility of the federal government's drug priorities for not putting total emphasis on the drugs that kill, that cause people to be addicted and have to steal to support their habit. And heroin and meth is where all of your priorities should be. And it's not just Mr. Hoffman, a brilliant actor at 46 years of age, who first went to prescription drugs and then came back to heroin. That's our two major issues, I guess. I had a young friend, son of a girl I dated, who died of a heroin overdose about 2 years ago. I went to a party in Memphis recently, not Vermont, where the governor spent his entire State of the State hour address talking about the ravages of heroin in his state, but Memphis, Tennessee, where 4 women, give or take my age, well, maybe 15 years younger, sometimes I lose perspective, talked about heroin being a great problem among their children and in the Memphis community, and about another young man who had died of heroin. Heroin is getting into the arms of young people. And when we put marijuana on the same level as heroin and LSD and meth and crack and cocaine, we are telling young people not to listen to the adults about the ravages and the problems, and they don't listen because they know you're wrong. Because as Mr. Micah said, we know a lot of young people smoke marijuana. They shouldn't. Young people should be being young people. The most precious commodity in the world is time. Young people have got lots of time. Mr. Mike and I don't have that much more time. That's just the realities. And when you're young, enjoy being young, playing ball, taking it easy, just doing kids' things and learning. And you shouldn't be doing drugs, but they are. And we need to make sure that we keep them alive. We need to educate them. But our efforts ought to be toward meth and heroin. That's where efforts should be. And it shouldn't be Schedule 1. Anybody that goes to jail for marijuana is a crime when people for possession are taking their liberties away. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of resources. It's a crime committed by our government. There is a cultural lag in this country, and this Congress is a leader in it. With all due respect, you should be listening to scientists. I understand the parents who are grieved because their child died of an overdose. They didn't overdose on marijuana. And you're listening to them rather than the scientists? Mr. Botticelli, it may go back to A Few Good Men, the movie, Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth. The truth is the drug war failed. Your direction on marijuana is a failure. Get to dealing and saving kids from heroin overdoses. My young 22-year-old friend died of a heroin overdose. Yeah, he smoked marijuana, probably the first thing he did. But that's not why he smoked heroin or shot it up. Maybe he did it because he heard people like you saying they're all bad and they're all terrible and you can't deal with the truth, and tell them, well, maybe marijuana doesn't kill you. Heroin does and meth does. They're different. And until you deal with the truth, the kids aren't going to believe you at all. Now, you talked about alcohol, and you may have gotten to this. Cirrhosis of the liver, pretty serious thing. Violence against spouses and women. People don't smoke marijuana and beat up their wives and girlfriends. They get drunk. Sometimes they beat up their wives and girlfriends. And I know you've got your statistics. I would debate your statistics. And if you get into your statistics about the amount of people who had marijuana in their system who were arrested or had fatal accidents, I would submit they probably had other drugs in their system, like cocaine or crack in addition to the marijuana, or they had alcohol and marijuana wasn't the cause. Because what I've understand is people smoke marijuana, mostly they drive slower and they look out for the cops. They don't drive fast and wild like people do on alcohol and cause deaths.
Here's a song called Undone from Waken the Neighbors.
With God is in your maybe we should look at it this way. You don't just think about going out and getting a new car. You go out and you get it. Now that you've got it, you go out and you drive it. People are going to ask you about your new car, and because you love it, you'll drop everything you're doing and you'll tell them about it. And if words are not your thing, you still show off your new car by how well you care for it. Sadly, that car is going to rust and the paint's going to fade. God's love is just because. He will always be there for you no matter how many dings you take, no matter how many spills. He will always love you.
To awaken to what is possible in each of our individual lives, projected into our families, our communities, and within our friendships. Let's find a higher order of awareness that changes the world, that takes power back from those that would rob us of it.
I'm going to play some clips from Congresswoman from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard, who was running for president in the Democratic primary. And she's quite something. It would have been real interesting if she had been allowed to be the candidate, because we would have got some real good ideas out there and awareness. But of course, it would not have mattered if she had become the candidate, because she would not become president, because everyone knows what's going on right now. And it's similar to what happened in the Bush-Gore situation. George Bush Jr. and Al Gore were competing in the presidential, whatever you want to call it, game. And, the big presidential football game. Anyway, everyone woke up the next morning after the election, and Al Gore was the next president of the United States. And then, George Bush Jr. contested that, and it looked like Al Gore was going to be president up until about December 15th, when, it was decided, and, we found out that it had been decided that George Bush Jr. was going to be not elected, appointed president, or allowed to be president, because as it turned out, with the half a dozen or so documentaries and all the evidence and all the hearings and all the stuff that happened afterwards, there is no doubt that those computerized ballot boxes, all this computerized stuff, was, the election was totally rigged back then, in the Bush-Gore election. And it's pretty well established. Most people pretty well know that. Anyone who's really looked into it, seen the evidence, not people that just take the spoon-fed stuff, the mainstream media, the big lie machine tells them every day. But, the real deal. So, there was a big push to eliminate those electronic voting machines, and it's too bad they didn't, because like I say, even if Tulsi had been had been the candidate, it would not have mattered, because the corporatocracy that is in control, and they would find President Trump much more appealing to them than Tulsi Gabbard, which would really bring them down. I mean, she would not only oppose them, but she is strong enough and powerful enough and dynamic, even an ex-soldier, that, she would be a serious challenge to them. So, we're in a situation now where, of course, the corporatocracy, what's his name, that thing, the Democratic guy, that they're, that they're appointing. He's always done the corporate, he's done the bidding of the corporations, and now it's the medical industrial complex is trying to really, jam their chemicals in our arms and things and all kinds of terrible stuff. And they know he'll just go along with it. So, they're going to continue. They're just, so, it looks like, the election process is just screwed for the time being, and everyone knows it, and they don't even have to wait for, 6 months or a year afterwards to watch the hearings and watch the documentaries and figure out for yourself. It's obvious right now, obvious as can be. I mean, I watch the feeds, I watch the hearings, I listen to the testimonies of these people that are talking, the thousands of people that are talking in hearings across the country. And there's no doubt about this thing. There's no doubt. So, people just accept it because they think, well, we got to get rid of Trump. Well, this guy, this other guy, this guy they're appointing, he's not good news at all.
You have criticized Hillary Clinton as the, quote, personification of the rot that has sickened the Democratic Party. What is the rot you see in the Democratic Party?
That our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people. It is a party that has been and continues to be influenced by the foreign policy establishment in Washington, represented by Hillary Clinton and others' foreign policy, by the military-industrial complex and other greedy corporate interests. I'm running for president to be the Democratic nominee that rebuilds our Democratic Party, takes it out of their hands, and truly puts it in the hands of the people of this country, a party that actually hears the voices of Americans who are struggling all across this country, and puts it in the hands of veterans and fellow Americans who are calling for an end to this ongoing Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy doctrine of regime change wars, overthrowing dictators in other countries, needlessly sending my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way to fight in wars that actually undermine our national security and have cost us thousands of American lives. These are wars that have cost us as American taxpayers trillions of dollars since 9/11 alone, dollars that have come out of our pockets, out of our hospitals, out of our schools, out of our infrastructure needs. As president, I will end this foreign policy, end these regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and arms race, and instead invest our hard-earned taxpayer dollars actually into serving the needs of the American people right here at home.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
Here is Tulsi Gabbard talking on the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah. Well, I think it's evident where we see those who are very entrenched in this this broken system feel very threatened by the rise of people-powered campaigns, individual contributions coming in and supplanting the big money that they get from, the PACs and lobbyists, and there's fear there because they see their whole world being disrupted by people like me or others who are coming in and saying, no, we're not buying into any of that. And we're coming in to actually fulfill the mission that we've been charged with by those who voted for us to serve the people, all the people of this country.
And would you say that, well, this is my position. I think that Trump plays a part of that because I think he was the first guy to come to come in basically self-funded or being funded through his own means, and not listening to the rest of the Republican Party, saying, hey, I'm going to take over, and I'm going to do this my way. And then knowing that he could do that, and knowing that there were so many Republicans against him, and knowing that there's so many Democrats against him as well, but yet he's still the president.
Yep.
Like, people are like, Jesus, this is a fragile system. Like, this system it's what they've done to acquire power is still very vulnerable, even though they have this deeply entrenched system of weird little relationships, that it's not good enough.
Yeah.
That if the people do rise up and they decide, hey, we want to put Tulsi in as president, you're going to have a different situation, and a lot of you clowns are going to be out of work.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's really that's the message that we're carrying to living rooms and town halls and communities across the country is Washington continues to underestimate the power of the people.
And it's supposed to work for you.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, our founding fathers had this vision for our country that our government would be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And instead, what we have is a government of the rich and powerful, by and for the rich and powerful, or of the special interests in corporations, by and for the special interests in corporations. Yes. And, we the people get left behind.
You have been listening to the Cannabination program on WGOT LP 100.1 FM, Gainesville Community Radio, streaming worldwide at WGOT.org. And this has been your Cannabination program dedicated to the revival of and into the 21st century of the organic lifestyle. Let's get back to nature. It's our only hope. We're in this situation because of our divorce from it. So we're all in this together, and we need to be human once again. See you next time. Farewell till next week.